Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we take your stack of sources and distill it down to the essential knowledge you need without the information overload.
Today, we're tackling a topic that really shifts the conversation.
It really does. We're doing a deep dive into inclusive education for children with Down syndrome,
Yeah.
but we're moving beyond, just the clinical definition.
Right. We're going to explore the global impact, the specific hurdles in education, and then analyze a really comprehensive framework for inclusion that's rooted in Islamic ethical principles.
And the context is mainly Indonesia, which is fascinating.
It is. And the source material is compelling. It's not just a report on a problem. It's an opinion piece that really builds a blueprint for a solution. It grounds everything in both research and religious ethics.
So it's not just theory.
Not at all. It's designed to create this holistic social and spiritual framework for these kids.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Our mission is to first grasp the true scope of this challenge, the systemic barriers these children are facing.
And then from there, we can dissect the practical, ethical, and spiritual blueprint that the source proposes.
Right. The goal is to see how this framework could help children with Down syndrome really flourish in their communities. So let's start by framing the subject, because the source makes a very important distinction right at the top.
A critical one.
Down syndrome is often and incorrectly called a disease.
Yeah, and the source is adamant. It is not an illness. It's a genetic disorder. It's caused by an extra copy of the 21st chromosome. That's it.
And that clarification, seeing it as a genetic reality and not some illness, that has to be crucial for shifting public perception.
It is. It moves us from pity to acceptance.
Yeah.
And if we look at the scale of this, it is far from a marginal issue.
What do the numbers look like?
Well, global data from the WHO in 2023 estimates that somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 children are born with Down syndrome every year, worldwide.
Wow, so that's thousands of families every single year.
Precisely. And if we zoom in on the source's context, Indonesia, the Ministry of Health reported in 2022 that the prevalence is 0.12% of all live births.
That percentage sounds small, but I'm guessing in a country that large.
It translates into a very significant number. And the source stresses that this has, profound consequences for the education system, for families, and for the whole social structure.
So it demands a national level response.
It has to.
Okay, so understanding that scale brings us to the core issue.
Right.
The educational environment itself. We know children with Down syndrome have characteristic physical and intellectual features.
Right. And the source points out that this often means delays in key areas. Things like speaking, understanding complex instructions, fine motor skills.
These are the exact characteristics that demand the education system adapt to them, not the other way around.
That is the key distinction. The problem isn't the child's ability to learn, but the system's ability to teach them in a way that works for them.
So the potential is there.
Absolutely. The source argues so forcefully that these children can grow and develop successfully. They can gain independence, they can contribute, but only if they get guidance that is patient, loving, and, fundamentally tailored to what they need.
So what are the barriers then? In a place like Indonesia, what's stopping that potential from being realized?
Well, the source is very direct. It argues the current system is structurally and culturally resistant to true inclusion.
Wow. Resistant is a strong word.
It is. It cites Indonesia's National Disability Commission, the KND, which noted in 2023 that there's this persistent systemic discrimination against children with special needs in schools.
So this isn't just about individual attitudes.
Now, it's about a system that was designed from the ground up for neurotypical learners.
So what does that failure look like, on the ground, in a school?
It shows up as three critical deficiencies. First, a huge lack of specialized guiding teachers. Educators who are actually trained in how to work with these kids.
Okay, so a staffing issue?
A huge one. Second, the absence of genuinely adaptive curricula. If the curriculum is totally rigid, it fails these students from day one. And third, the physical environment. Non-disability friendly facilities.
So the buildings themselves can be a barrier.
They immediately signal exclusion before a lesson even starts.
The staff, the curriculum, the physical space, it sounds like a complete overhaul is needed.
It really is. And the consequence of all this, as the source points out, is a tragically low rate of school participation for these children. They're just filtered out.
And that doesn't just hurt the child.
No, it deprives the whole society of the chance to develop real empathy.
This is where the paper makes its pivot. It moves from diagnosing the problem to proposing a solution. And this is where it gets incredibly profound.
Yes, this is the core of the argument.
How does the Islamic framework it proposes completely reframe this challenge.
It tackles the problem right at its root, how we define human worth and our responsibility to each other. First, it establishes education as a universal human right, based on a divine command. The source cites the first verses of Surah Al-Alaq in the Quran, which command us to read, to learn. It positions education as mandatory for every single person, regardless of their condition.
So learning isn't a privilege, it's an inherent right, and teaching is an obligation.
Exactly. And the ethical view goes even deeper by challenging how we perceive difference. The source looks at classical Islamic scholarship, specifically the work of Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya.
And what does he say?
Well, historically, a disability might have been seen as a flaw, a source of shame. The source uses the word aib. This ethical reframing completely rejects that idea.
It redefines the child.
Yes, the child with Down syndrome isn't a flaw. They are defined as a sacred trust, an amma, given by God to their parents and to the whole community.
A sacred trust.
And even more powerfully, they're seen as a source of immense spiritual reward, a ladang pahala, for anyone who dedicates themselves to nurturing them.
That is a fundamental psychological shift. If you move from seeing a child as a burden to seeing them as a sacred trust and a source of reward.
It changes everything. It changes how a parent interacts, how a government allocates funding. Because if they are a sacred trust, then neglecting them isn't just discrimination. It's a spiritual failure.
And this reframing leads to, what, 3 core principles for education.
That's right, 3 foundational principles. First is Rama,
Which means?
unrestricted, boundless compassion and love. This sets the whole emotional tone. Second is Adl, which means justice in treatment.
Okay, and the source is careful about defining justice, right?
Very careful. It emphasizes that justice does not mean sameness bukan penyaman. It means tailored treatment.
Wait, that's a bit counterintuitive. A lot of modern models focus on equality as identical treatment. Why is treating them identically seen as an injustice here?
Because the principle of Adl recognizes that people have different capacities. True justice means you acknowledge that capacity and provide the specific resources that child needs to reach their highest potential.
Even if that potential looks different from another child's.
Exactly. Forcing a child with a different learning speed into a neurotypical curriculum just sets them up to fail. That's unjust.
That makes perfect sense. So tailored treatment is true justice. What's the third principle?
It's talim. The learning process itself, it has to be meticulously adapted to the child, following the other 2 principles of compassion and tailored justice.
Compassion, justice, and adaptation. Okay, let's get into the actionable takeaways. The source outlines 9 specific practical steps for this.
9 kiyat, yes. And they start, as you'd expect, with the emotional environment.
Step 1, love-based education.
This covers 2 concepts, mirakaba and mahaba. Children with Down syndrome are often incredibly sensitive to the emotions around them. They can pick up on frustration or pity or genuine acceptance instantly.
And what do those terms mean?
Muraqaba is the awareness that God is watching your actions, so educators have to act with the highest integrity. And mahaba is sincere, genuine love. The key takeaway here is empathy, not mere pity.
So that emotional foundation is step 1. What's built on top of that? The curriculum has to change.
That's step 2, an adaptive and meaningful curriculum. And this applies a principle called takalif mukhayar.
Can you break that down for us? That sounds like a key term.
It roughly translates to, the obligation is tailored to the ability. So the curriculum shifts away from abstract ideas and focuses heavily on practical life skills, on character development or akhlaq, and simple religious practices.
Like daily prayers or prophetic stories?
Exactly. The focus is on function and morality, not memorizing complex academic subjects they may never use.
Which leads right into step 3, which is habituation of worship and morality.
Right. Building character through routine. Gradual teaching of simple prayer, reciting short passages of the Quran. And this isn't just theory. The source cites a 2023 study that found children who were routinely involved in daily worship showed a measurable increase in their independence and emotional stability.
That's fascinating. So that spiritual structure provides real, tangible developmental benefit.
It becomes a tool for independence. And following that is step 4, building self-confidence through practical activities or amal.
Valuing manual effort.
Yes. Involving the child in things like drawing, tidying up, simple cooking, it builds self-worth. The source ties this to a prophetic tradition that dignifies manual work, saying the best food you can eat is from the result of your own hands.
So it validates practical skills over purely intellectual ones. Of course, this can't just happen in a school.
Which brings us to step 5, collaboration. involving teachers, parents, and the community. The source sees the local mosque as a vital, inclusive social space.
Are there real-world examples of this?
There are. It points out that some mosques in Jakarta have started Masjid Ramah Anak Disabilitas programs, basically, mosques that are friendly to children with disabilities, and they've been running since 2022.
That shows real community buy-in. What about tools? What role does technology play?
That's step 6, use of adaptive technology. The digital age gives us powerful tools, things like apps for recognizing the Arabic alphabet, animated stories, daily prayer videos.
And there's data on this.
Yeah, a 2024 study found children showed increased learning attention when they used this kind of visual interactive media that was based on Islamic values. Technology really helps drive focus.
So the content is adapted and the delivery method is adapted. How do you keep them motivated?
Step 7, reward and Islamic motivation strategy. These children respond incredibly well to praise and positive reinforcement.
Like what?
Things like verbal praise, small gifts, or even visual trackers like Amal stars. But the deeper concept is adrun ala niyya.
Reward based on good intention.
Exactly. So even if the task isn't done perfectly, the effort and the sincere desire to do good are what get recognized and rewarded. This builds intrinsic motivation. It values the process of trying, not just the outcome.
That's powerful. Okay, so we've covered the student, the curriculum, the community, but what about the teachers?
Step 8, training for Islamic education teachers. The data from Indonesia's Ministry of Religious Affairs shows an urgent need for these teachers to get specific training.
So the government is aware of this gap.
They are. They actually began designing a PAI inclusive module in 2023. It's a first step, but it's an essential one. It acknowledges that empathy isn't enough. You need professional training.
And finally, all of this has to be supported by the wider culture.
Which is step 9, avoiding stigma and promoting social courage. The ethical framework strictly forbids mockery, or istaitza. The source uses a Quranic verse to show that respect for differences is mandatory. Educators have to be agents of change, making the whole community a welcoming space.
If we tie all of this back to the big picture, what's really happening here is a complete reevaluation of human worth.
That's it, exactly. Value is placed on piety, on ketakwaan, and on genuine effort, usaha, not on intelligence or physical appearance. It demands that we measure success by moral development and functional independence, not by standardized test scores.
So what does this all mean then? It means this level of inclusion requires a whole new paradigm. It requires synergy.
Yes, it's not just about teachers working harder. It's about schools, government ministries, local communities, and families all working together to reinforce these principles.
Absolutely. And the source concludes with this really profound idea that if children with Down syndrome are given this fair, compassionate, faith-rooted space to learn,
They are highly likely to become independent, morally upright individuals.
and they end up inspiring others through their dedication and effort,
That's the ultimate outcome.
which really challenges you, the listener, to consider where genuine inclusivity begins. Is it just a checklist of ramps and adaptive software? Or does it have to start with a fundamental ethical shift in how we view human difference, one that values effort and intrinsic worth over anything else? That's a massive question to mull over as you go about your day.
A profound thought indeed.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into inclusive education and ethical frameworks. We'll see you next time.